January 21st meeting of the Danville-Boyle County Board of Adjustments to order. Appreciate everybody being here on this cold evening. First thing on our agenda is the approval of minutes from our December 17th meeting. Second by Willie, first by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Tonight we have two public hearings on our agenda. The first is Stepping Stone Recovery Housing, and they have filed an appeal of complaint 1171 for operating a group living facility at 520 High Street. The property is zoned two-family residential, and for appeals, the process is a little different, and we will allow counsel for the appellant to come forward and give their presentation.
I'm a little confused, concerned because my client isn't here yet. So I didn't know if perhaps if it would please the board if we could allow, and I don't want to put anybody else on the spot, but if we could call the other hearing first and let me figure out where my client's at, because we spoke this morning, he knew to be here at 5:30, so I hope everything's okay.
Certainly don't have a problem arranging the itinerary. So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All righty, so we will give the appellant a little time to show up, and we will switch to the other public hearing for JTB Construction. They have applied for a variance to reduce the side setback on both the east and west sides of property at 496 Grant Street. And the property is currently zoned two-family residential, and I will let Michaela give us all the details.
I'm going to let Henry hop in here first. He just has an announcement to make, I guess.
Mr. Chair, I am a counsel for JTB Construction, and on that basis, I'm going to step out and recuse myself. I think it's best for professional ethics, and I'll be back in for the next matter.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Let me find this on the slideshow real quick. Oh, you know what? I've got it there. All right. Yep, so JTB Construction LLC has applied for a variance to reduce the side yard setback on the eastern side of the property from 10 feet to 8.78 feet, and the western side of the property from 10 feet to 7.83 feet at 496 Grant Street in Danville. So this is the property here. This aerial image is a little old. That existing, that structure shown on the aerial, it has since been demoed and removed. The property is zoned RM2, two-family residential. We have some ICD zoning along Grant Street here. This is part of Center College. They own those properties. So for residential uses, you're allowed to do RM3 for the ICD zoning district, so it allows a slightly more higher density, but the setbacks remain the same of the 10 feet. The applicant came to us because he was starting to look at it and he realized that the roof overhangs were going to encroach on the setbacks, and we do include that as part of our setback requirements, so that's why we're here before you today. This is just a look at the lot and then the survey to the left. Sorry, I couldn't get the survey any bigger on the slideshow without it being wrongly oriented. So this is the pink line here kind of shows the footprint of the actual structure, and then the black line on the outside shows where the roof hang's going to be. So you can see that, again, it encroaches more on the rear portion of the property, the 7.83 and the 8.78 feet there. It's meeting all of the other setback requirements as far as front yard and rear yard. So it's really just kind of these back corners here that it's encroaching. When you look at this is just a view of the lot, the vacant lot there. It is a 53-foot wide lot. This is smaller than what we would typically require for the RM2 zoning district. I believe it's 80 feet. Let me double check here. It is. So the lot width that we typically require for the RM2 zoning district is 80 feet. So again, this is 53. It's significantly more narrow than what we would require for the RM2 district. This is pretty common in older parts of the community. All these lots were likely platted before, planning and zoning. Yeah, before they put minimum lot size and lot width requirements on it. So I just also took a picture. So you can kind of see here, I'm looking at these two houses. They're not both 10 feet off the lot, so typically you'd see a 20-foot spacing in between those two homes if they're meeting our requirements. So it's not completely uncharacteristic for the general vicinity. So when you're looking at required findings for variance, that's what you look at. Special circumstances on the lot, which is that the lot width is not meeting that 80-foot. It would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land. And, these circumstances do apply to most of the homes in the vicinity. A lot of them are undersized from the 80-foot that we require. So is there any questions for me on this? No? Okay. I'm not sure if you have any questions for the applicant or if he wants to speak. No. All right.
Applicant, you're good to go? Don't want to speak? All right. Just for clarity, I just want to open the floor to anybody that is willing to speak in favor of the applicant, and anybody that would like to speak against the applicant also has the opportunity to do so at this point. If not, we will close the public hearing portion of that and begin deliberation on this item.
I had the opportunity to drive by, look at the neighborhood, to answer my own thoughts about, does this change the nature of the neighborhood?
And?
That's not, as Michaela has said, this is an older neighborhood, many of the lots are smaller.
I did the same thing. I see no issue with this request. Actually approved it and what was there before. So,
Yeah. All right, well,
Jim.
I'll entertain a motion to approve this. All right. All righty. Motion by Jim, second by Willie to approve this variance. And in lieu of counsel, I would just say that
Yeah, sorry. Let's
our,
see if we can do
our
this.
motion to approve the variance would not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare. It would not alter the essential character of the general vicinity and will not cause harm or nuisance to the public, nor will it allow unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of the zoning regulations.
Yep.
Does
And
that
I would just
sound
say
about
that some of the findings that we found were that, the lot width was significantly less than what is typically required for the RM2 zoning district, and that it was not uncommon for the, the general area. Yep, exactly.
All righty. Well, let's add that wording to our finding. And any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. You good? Thanks, sir. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you. I'll go step out and grab Henry and then.
All righty, thank you.
get started.
All righty. Going back to Stepping Stone Recovery's appeal of complaint 1171, we will now turn everything over to the counsel for the appellant.
Thank you. And if it's okay with the board, I'd like to hear from Mr. Hobson, who is the proprietor, and then I will speak after him. I thought it might be best for you all to be able to talk to him directly, and then I could talk about the legal side of it, if that's okay. Thank you.
It's your show at the moment.
All right.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Blake Hobson. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I been in Danville my whole life, pretty much. I grew up here. This place means a lot to me. I'm a person in recovery as well. And for the house that I run, initially when it first opened, I actually was a resident of the house and ended up taking over the house after the initial owners didn't want to deal with it anymore. So this house means a lot to me in the house. It's helped so many men. A lot of the probation and parole, ASAP committee, people lean on the house for support for men in recovery in the community. So, if it means anything, right, like this house is a lifeline for a lot of people in the house, for a lot of men moving back to Danville, Isaiah House, All Together Recovery, all of the local treatment centers all refer, right, to the program here for people to be able to build their lives back in Danville. And for men, this is really the only spot that is in Danville. So just, if it means anything for what the people that are returning back to Danville, this is really one of the only options they have. So if it means anything, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Blake. So the reason for this appeal is there's a couple of reasons and a couple of issues that we take with the code. The code defines a family as 3 or more unrelated people and their children, or 3 unrelated people and their children. Our traditional sense of a family, which is husband, wife, their kids. And it allows for an unlimited number of occupants of folks that are related either by blood or marriage. The problem with the way we think the code reads is it's missing a key part of the way HUD defines a family. And if you give me just a moment, HUD defines a family as all of those aspects that I just spoke about, but they also make a provision for 2 or more previously unrelated disabled persons who choose to live together due to financial, not familial status. This encourages these individuals who are interested in sharing or pooling their resources to do so. They further go on to say that a disabled family means a family whose head, including the co-head spouse or sole member, is a person with disability. It may include 2 or more persons with disabilities living together, or 1 or more persons with disabilities with 1 or more living aids. Here's the problem that we are faced with, our community as well as many of the surrounding communities. I don't think that there's anyone among us that has not been touched in one way or the other by substance use disorder. And by the way, substance use disorder, which is became that term in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5, which was the most recent one in 2013 that all of our mental health professionals use, combined together the substance use and the addiction disorders. But the short answer for that is folks with substance use disorder are considered either mentally or physically disabled under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's all the legal stuff. Let's talk about the practical stuff. The practical stuff is this. Substance use disorder is here to stay. We have to deal with it. Our community has to deal with it. Our nation has to deal with it. Quite simply, I don't do much criminal law anymore, but the majority of the criminal law when I practiced criminal law was substance use disorder related. I like to tell people that I cut my teeth on what we call the DNA docket, which is dependency, neglect, and abuse docket. I spent 10 years doing that docket. With the exception of 2 cases, they were all substance use disorder related. It was parents that were in the throes of addiction and couldn't care for their children. Whether we like it or not, this is the society we live in. I believe that we need to change the way we define family according to the code here in Boyle County. And what's interesting is our surrounding counties have already done that. In Lincoln County, they define a family as 5 or more, or up to 5 unrelated individuals, their children. They make a provision for folks with substance use disorder. Families living together, up to 8 individuals in a home with disabilities. Anderson County does the same thing. Our sister county right across the, just a few miles down the road, Mercer County, holds that same definition. That is the problem we're facing, along with a couple of the other things that, if I don't mean to call anybody out, but I have had conversations with folks in this room about the lack of affordable housing in our city. Here's the reality of what folks with substance use disorder face. First off, many of them don't even have a driver's license. They don't have a vehicle. If they were convicted of drug-related felonies, then what we have is we have folks that have a felony on the record that quite simply just can't go get, don't have the employment opportunities that others of us have. That being the case, we have got to take a look at what we're doing here. And I believe we need to make a change to the way we define family. I think we need to allow the family in our city code, in our planning and zoning codes, to incorporate individuals with disabilities, not just substance use disorder, but individuals with disabilities that have chosen to pool their resources together to function in our society, to help each other out. And as we all know, the definition of family keeps changing it's changed over the last 15 years and probably will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But in our case, I believe that we need to really look at the way we define it, and we need to allow homes not just like Blake's, but homes like these to be in our city and make provisions for that. I've got all kinds of law here that we can talk about if you folks have questions on the law. I've got all kinds of stuff about the Americans with Disabilities Act, if you all want that. But I think the reality is it comes down to we need to change the way we're defining family. We change that definition, that actually solves the problem, at least in this situation. Does the board have any questions?
Let me know if you got it correctly. It says in here that it's all starting because of complaints that were calling in, is that correct? What were the nature of those complaints?
We work on a complaint-based system. I don't recall the specific.
I do.
Do you? Okay, yep.
Get my, there. I received a call from probation and parole, actually. They had worked with us before on houses of this nature, and neighbors that had gotten upset because there were certain individuals with certain histories that they did not necessarily want.
So the nature of the complaint wasn't that they were disruptive, it was just.
That there were too many individuals
Yeah,
in the house.
yeah, we had a,
Clear though.
yeah.
Too many individuals, what was the number of too many? Because I spoke to Shane about this as soon as.
Sorry.
He
Blake,
told-
sorry, you gotta go to the microphone if you speak that way, we can get it on the record. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
You can still talk, like they're just saying you got to come up here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was interested in hearing about, because I spoke to Shane Smith, he was at the probation parole office, and he said he didn't know anything about it. Whenever he had heard about the two parole officers coming to the house, it was just two people coming to do a home visit to see if some person could stay there, and they decided in that case not to. But when I spoke to Shane himself, he had never, I talked to Shane probably once a month about his probation guys, and he has never once, ever had an issue, and he's referred guys to me for the last 5 years.
I believe you all have copies of the complaint.
I would love to see the
Or
complaint.
you should. And I don't recall the name of the worker,
I don't know if I put it in there.
you
or
had
not.
spoken with him previously. But he told me there were 7 individuals that had that address listed through him at that time.
Yeah, sorry, I don't think I put a copy of the complaint in here, with it, but,
Which is, if I could address that, an interesting part about that, which is that HUD defines, and I think we all, if I can back up for a minute, one of the reasons we have zoning laws and we have zoning codes is because we don't, first off, for concentration. Secondly, we don't really want, a nuclear power plant built next to a grade school. HUD uses a rule of thumb that 2 people per bedroom seems like the right number, like the maximum number. If you go more than 2 people per bedroom, then maybe we're having a few too many folks in there. In this particular case, this is a 4-bedroom house, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. So with having 7 individuals, technically, we're still under the HUD guidelines, which is 2 people per bedroom. If that helps in any way. That isn't in the, I didn't find that in our codes where we define that, the occupancy, those types of things. But again, as we're exploring these and talking about, okay, how are we defining family? Clearly, we don't want 20 people living in a 2-bedroom house. That would be too many. But it could be something where we talk about adding if you've got that kind of rule of thumb, 2 people per bedroom.
And I'll also mention, there is a standard for recovery houses that's in Kentucky. It's called NAR, National Alliance of Recovery Residences. And there's different levels, 1, 2, 3, and 4. My house would be considered a level 2 only because I allow the house manager to be paid. I pay him to do his job there, right? I let him live there for free, right, to watch over the house, and I come and manage, whenever he needs some support. So that's how the house runs as of now, right, through this, level 2 NAR. So NAR, right, Recovery, National Alliance of Recovery Residents, has their standards. You can look them up for a level 2, right? Each person, for the first person, I think it's 100 square feet per person. Every person after that needs 75 square feet per person. So usually kind of just depending on how big the room is, can decide how many people. But typically, rule of thumb, like you said, 2 people per bathroom, right? So essentially, this house being a 2-bedroom, thumb of rule, you could say, it could have up to 12 if it wanted to follow NAR standards, right? But you still have the square footage per person. So I felt it was fair, 7 to 8 people in the house, with my house manager making 9. He gets his own room. There's a big bedroom, right? That 3 people in there, 3 singles bed. They all have enough room, plenty of room. There's a double bedroom in there. Downstairs, there's 2 more. So I think square footage per person is usually what the NAR standard is. So if you're looking on something to measure, NAR would be a good one to look for. So,
And I think
standardized.
And I think we cut Lisa off. I think, I'm sorry, Lisa, you were, okay. Am I allowed to address Lisa and ask her? Okay. On the complaint that you received, so was it questions about too much traffic? Was it questions about
It was
bad
questions
behavior?
about the amount of individuals in the home.
Okay. And I know one of the issues that in my research that comes up, and a lot of times in these things, is folks complaining, the neighbors complaining in advance that there's going to be all this traffic, there's going to be all these vehicles, there's going to be all this extra wear and tear in the neighborhood. And the studies show that that's actually not what happens, for the very practical reason that the majority of folks with substance use disorders don't have a driver's license, probably don't have a vehicle. In fact, what they found in a lot of these homes is usually there's 1 person, 2 people that have a vehicle. The rest either have to hitch a ride with the house manager, with the person that has the vehicle, or take Uber, which I don't know if we have in Danville yet or not. But
Just creative. They'll figure it out. Yeah.
so there's most of the complaints that people think about up front, in reality, end up not coming to fruition. I don't know if that helps any or not. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. Is there any other questions, anything that you all would like me to address? Like I said, I've got plenty of case law here, but I don't know that the practicality of that in this situation applies.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
Is the house operating as a business?
So Mr. Hobson operates a bit. And here's the thing with these, you get into a bit of a hybrid situation. So the house is actually owned by a couple that have leased the entirety of the house to Mr. Hobson. So there's what we would call a general lease, which is leased to Mr. Hobson's business. He operates that as an LLC, is that correct? For obvious reasons, tax reasons and liability reasons. But then Mr. Hobson, in turn, has individual leases with the people that are there, because not everybody needs to. Here's the other situation we run into with these types of folks. Transitional housing, which is what I like to call this, you don't necessarily need to have a year or 2 years or 3 years. What you need is the ability to get on your feet, get a job, and then hopefully move back into a more productive part of society. So in this case, are they month-to-month or week-to-week leases?
Typically, we do a week-to-week lease agreement, and that's usually just because of the nature of how guys end up coming to the house, right? Usually, they're not really stable at a time, and it's not the norm in the sober living, transitional living, that business to do a month lease. It's usually a week-to-week agreement, just because of these guys usually are not super stable, right? So a week-to-week is usually a good check-in, right? So hey, we have a week-to-week lease agreement. Hey, as long as you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing within the house, like, hey, our lease agreement is fine, and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing for the house. So they're managed well at the house. It's not like, they're just free and roaming around the world.
Yeah,
anywhere they
I'm
want to
just
go.
gonna repeat that he said it was a week-to-week lease. Yeah, just try and go to the mic. Sorry, we gotta keep it for the record in the minutes, so.
And the thing is, in this situation, what that allows, because your traditional landlord is not going to want to sign a week-to-week lease. That's too much work. I represent landlords. If they brought me a week-to-week lease, I'd be like, what are you thinking? But in a situation like this, it allows for Mr. Hobson or whoever's managing the house, in the event that there's a relapse, in the event that there's an issue, it allows them to deal with that immediately and to maintain the quiet enjoyment of the neighbors in the neighborhood, if that answers your questions.
So, follow-up question to that. Is there, I guess, active recovery counseling going on in the house at that time?
If you want to speak to
Yeah, so the house doesn't have any clinical service. It's a peer-driven house, right? So usually it's like, hey, whoever's been there longest usually has the seniority. I require the guys to do self-help meetings throughout the week, so they check in with the house manager. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, what I'm basically getting to is, I see two possible issues here. It sounds like you're operating a short-term rental.
I don't know how to answer that. In a sense, it's a sober living recovery housing program that, I essentially sublease it to the guys that want to live there, to protect myself and protect the landlords, for their property that they have. So I had them sign a lease. Am I knocking guys out of the house if they get $100 behind on rent? No way, right? Like I'm here to help these people.
I'm not
Yeah.
worried about the
Yeah.
finances of
Absolutely.
your business. What I'm wondering is, are you operating a short-term rental, and are you operating a business?
So the easiest way to answer that question, it is a business. Stepping Stones Recovery Housing is a business. And say the second part of that again?
Is it a short-term rental?
I had people that have stayed there for a year and a half because that's what they needed. I've
I
had
know.
people stay there for 3 weeks because that's what they needed
On a week-to-week basis?
on a week-to-week basis.
So if it's a business operating in an RM2, it would need a conditional use permit? No?
I
It
think
would
we
not.
initially
I
were
don't
looking
think
at
it's
this.
perm-
It's
I-
not permitted for a RM3 or 4.
Yeah.
That was
Let
the
me
word.
double check that. Yeah, so for RM2, a short-term rental is a conditional use permit. A group living facility is not permitted in the RM2 district. Because there's two different distinctions with how we, define things within the ordinance, but yeah.
And I think that's part of the issue that we're running into here, is the way we're defining family, this type of home automatically gets kicked into the group living situation. Whereas I think and I don't know if that's something that this board can do, or if this is something that needs to go to planning and zoning, but I think what we need to really look at is, how do we make it possible for our folks, for our fellow Danvillians, I'm not even sure if that's the right word, but Boyle County residents that are in recovery, how do we make it possible for them to have a place to live, to get back on their feet, and meet the need that we have as a community to, control density, make
It's-
sure that what needs to be done. And maybe that isn't the place, maybe, I don't know if the board this board has power to do that or not.
It's not the
but-
purview of this board to change
Right.
zoning ordinances in the city. Yeah,
But here, we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Here's where we're at,
sure, yeah.
so.
Mr. Chair, I'd welcome the opportunity to make my case, just so we have that for the record, if Mr. Bailey's.
I was going to see if council had anything further to add.
I've got lots more to add, but you all have been very kind, and I've already taken a half hour of your time, so.
We allow a rebuttal by our board attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My request to the board tonight is that you address the application that is before you tonight. And the question is, was there a violation of the zoning ordinance? Mr. Bailey is right about the prevalence of the plague of substance abuse. Mr. Hobson is right about the value of offering a hand up to individuals who are suffering from substance abuse. Mr. Baker, I think you're right to ask about practical concerns always, but the issue here is, was there a violation of the zoning ordinance? There was discussion of NAR standards. I will tell you that your zoning office has worked with a recovery house that is commencing and expanding operations in the city of Danville, and they're able to do that because that operation is not in violation of the zoning ordinance. Something that I put in every zoning enforcement lawsuit that I have to file is a pleading that a violation of the zoning ordinance that's allowed to persist does damage to the whole scheme of zoning. And just to pick one reason for that, if we were to let violations slide and then face some grave violation at a later time, we might not be able to enforce the ordinance against that later graver violation because they could bring a claim of selective enforcement against us. So that's why we need to be consistent in our approach. I want to address short-term rentals, which were brought up just now, and our use standards in the zoning ordinance for short-term rentals say that each room shall be rented for no longer than 30 days. And so I think that creates a problem for them being able to get a permit like that. But again, the conditional use permit is not the issue before you tonight. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask, and just one, my first one for Mr. Hobson, if you don't mind to step up, please. How long has this recovery home been in operation?
The house on 520 opened up in just September. We needed to move houses. So that 520 address has just started back in September.
Okay. Previous locations, what was the history?
Previously located on 217 Lisa Avenue, owned by Tony and Raymond Patton. They owned it as a sober living house, didn't want to do it anymore, leased it from me, the same deal that Mod Squad is doing it.
Right. And how long was it at Lisa Ave?
As far as I can tell, from 2018.
Okay.
And then I took it over, lived in 2009, took it over 2019, took it over in 2020.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hobson. That's all I have. I'll direct my next few questions to Michaela. What is the zoning designation of the subject property?
It's RM2, two-family residential.
And what kind of uses are permitted in the RM2 zone?
Single-family residential or duplexes or townhomes.
Okay. Is the appellant's use of the property classifiable as household living for single-family purposes?
I do not view it as that because of the definition that we have for family within Article 2 of the zoning ordinance, and I do have that up on the screen for you all. But basically, when you look at it, the three unrelated people, that's what I used to classify it as. We essentially have a cap for residential living, and so, you know, as a single-family residential unit, I would view it that it could have up to three unrelated people and be considered that family unit, one family.
Okay. Does the RM2 permit multifamily household living?
It does not, just two-family residential, so it could have a duplex, which I guess we classify as multifamily residential in our zoning ordinance, but it wouldn't allow for anything beyond 2 units.
Okay. How would the current use at 520 High be categorized by the use classifications under our zoning ordinance?
My interpretation is that it'd be classified as group living facility. The biggest reason for that, I don't believe I put that up on the screen, I apologize, but group living facility is essentially defined as, you know, it includes the terms transitional housing, which is how I would classify this house as well, but Henry might be pulling it up so I can more clearly state it, but Yeah. Um, oops, scrolled right past. Yeah, so group living is characterized by the residential occupancy of a structure by a group of people who do not meet the definition of household living. The size of the group may be larger than the average size of a household. Tenancy is arranged on a monthly or longer basis. Generally, group living structures have a common eating area for residents. The residents may receive care, training, or treatment as long as the caregivers also reside on the site. So again, they're not providing treatment or services on the site, but when they oops, I scrolled too far. Don't know how to work your laptop. Yeah, so examples of group living include dormitories, fraternities and sororities, monasteries and convents, group homes for the physically or mentally disabled, some residential programs for drug and alcohol treatment, halfway alternative or post-incarceration facilities, transitional homes, and some rooming boarding houses. So when I read that as examples of group living facility, I think that really encompasses, what the use has been described as tonight. And group living facilities are not permitted in the RM2 zoning district.
Do you know where they are permitted?
Yeah, Henry's really tested my memory out tonight, and I don't want to give you any wrong information. So they are conditional uses in the agricultural zoning district in the RM3. That's one of our multifamily residential zoning districts. They're permitted in the RM4. That's one of our multifamily residential zoning districts, as well as general business. That's one of our commercial zoning districts. And highway business, again, one of our commercial zoning districts. Conditional use in central business and the office professional district, again, both commercial districts. The public, which we do not have very much of that zoning designation, and then IBD, that's one of our industrial zoning districts.
And the only reason that I make her read the ordinance at this length is to show that there are possible options under the ordinance. Whether or not there's land zoned that way, there are ways to get to the destination. There are existing group living and substance recovery houses. I would ask that you adopt the findings that have been put into your packet tonight and sustain your director's decision.
Could I speak? I'm the property owner.
Henry, are you through?
I am through, yes,
Okay,
sir.
I will turn it back over to you yeah, you certainly.
My name is Danny Jones. I own Mod Squad Properties, which is who owns this property. I'm also a real estate broker that does property management. It's my main deal. I get calls daily from people, Shepherd's House, different people looking for properties because they're not available. And I've not saying that I rent to them out of zoning ordinance or whatever, but I do know they're renting in places that are zoned just like this, that, weren't anything filed against them. I've owned this house since 2009, I think. Never had a complaint. I've had more tenants living there prior to Blake that were family, Center College kids, because, it's close to Center. You get 3, 4, 5, 6 Center College people. It goes on all over town. Doesn't make it right, I understand that, but there's not places for these people. I manage over 100 rental properties, and, just there's no place. If I put something up for rent today, it's usually rented in 2 or 3 days. And I keep a list with Shepherd House and different people wanting places. It's just the way it is. Good, bad, or otherwise, that's my 2 cents worth. Blake has been a great tenant. There's no cars or anything over there. I haven't had a single complaint from the neighbors, and they all know me. So, the yard's kept up, the house kept up, rent's paid, and like I said, it's not the only place going on in town this way. Anybody got a question? That was my 2 cents worth.
I guess my question or comment would be that it seems to me that you want the definition in the zoning ordinance changed.
I do,
Is that right?
I do.
Well, it seems to me that the appropriate way to do that would be through an application for an amendment to the zoning ordinance, through the planning commission.
There is, that you all may or may not be aware of, there's something in the law called the exhaustion of remedies, which means I have to come here first.
Okay,
I have to come here first.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about what we do next, so.
We have a violation on the docket right now, which is the issue at hand. The greater issue is definitions and uses of property. And that's not definitely for our board.
I understand that, and the reality is, again, that this is it's in our community. We need, you know, that, what we do or don't do tonight is not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, and definitely with full compassion for what you're doing. And I think it's great that you're offering recovery.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody taking the time, and I'm sorry I get really upset up here, because this means a lot to me. I promise you it does. I work in recovery. I work from home mainly, right? But I work in recovery. I work for Medicaid plans, right? I'll go to meet people in treatment every day. That's for my regular job, right? And then my other job is taking care of, 7, 8 guys, right? If they'll stay there at the house, right? And I'll just say, right, like, if this is a no, right, 7 guys, right, are going to have to find a new place to live in Danville somewhere, right, within a 30-day period, right? It doesn't make sense to me in the sense that High Street, historically, renter's place, right? Low-income families, right? That's a great spot for That's a great spot for Blake to go there, right? RM2, there is no RM3 available in that area, right? None is available. If you pull up the maps for RM4, RM3, there's not much in Danville. It's all on the outskirts of Danville, right? These people without cars, the no bus system, right, doesn't make sense. It would not work, right? I think our ordinances, and I think they discriminate against people like me. I honestly do. And the people, like, if I go back to the house to tell them, hey, we just did the hearing, it didn't go as well as I thought it was going. These guys are worried that they're not going to have a place to live. They're worried that, like, every single day I'm getting calls. Hey, man, have you had the hearing yet? Hey, man, have you had the hearing yet? Because, like, I know I get to go home to my kids. Yeah, I have a home. Great. These guys do not have a home to go to. So on top of it, right, like, I'm not against you, right? I want to work out something to figure this out. What does somebody need to do in Danville to open up a sober living house to not fit into the RM3s that aren't available, right? Danny just stood up here and said they're not available. There's not a lot. I know you tried to paint that picture, but that's not an accurate representation.
I don't think that anybody up here is against what you're doing. I think that
I know
you're just doing it in the wrong
red
place.
tape. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and I also think it's just like the red tape that we've created for ourselves that it may hurt or suck to have to change, right? But I think it's something we need to do because I think there's a large population in Danville that is being left out of, that's being left out.
I agree with
that
you.
aren't being thought of.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just a further word in the spirit of cooperation, maybe this is cold comfort, but this board can work with you, and it's not necessarily a 30-day timer that might be coming in the wake of this decision. There's some leeway in that this board has exercised in the past.
Yeah, we just recently worked with somebody else on the exact same issue with a number of people in a house. So, in the Center College area, yeah. So, if you are through, we will close the public hearing portion.
I think we talked this to death for one evening. Yep.
Thank you for your time. We will now deliberate and come up with a finding.
I'm very sympathetic to Mr. Hobson's situation
Yes.
and aware of the value of the service he provides our community. I'm very sympathetic to Mr. Bailey's insights about how an appropriate review of our zoning regulations may allow us to serve the community better. And however, the finding by our Ms. Gary is appropriate and consistent with regulations and is neither capricious or willful. So I suggest that we sustain the ruling, but would ask that we can find some timeline, some generous timeline to allow Mr. Hobson and his residents to look for other opportunities.
I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. You know, very sympathetic with this. Actually have some of the people in recovery, not these guys, that actually we employ. You know, we give second chances to, and they all live in a similar situation as this, and it is very, very good for them. It gives them a structured environment to where they're held accountable by not only their peers, but they call it, quote unquote, the house dad. You know, they have to report, you know, get permission to leave or go out at night, and, you know, permission slip. So I'm very, very sympathetic with this. But the fact of the matter is, we didn't write these laws. We cannot change them. This board does not have the authority to do so.
Yeah.
You know, I think 6 months is a pretty generous timeline to let those folks, you know, that gets us through the winter and into the summer. I don't know what the pleasure of the board is, but that is my recommendation, because I am in the real estate business. I'm in the rental business. I have, you know, rental properties, and I know that when we post one for rent, it's gone in a day or
Yeah.
less.
I'm in the same boat.
So that is my recommendation. Maybe that'll give Brian some time to work on the board over there and maybe get some of this wording changed in these laws too.
I would think that would be, yeah, pretty good timeline.
Yeah, I can agree to go along with that, but I think we should affirm the planning director's findings and
Yeah.
give them 6 months.
Is 6 months adequate?
I think so. Do you have a different suggestion?
Or approximately June 30th. I mean, it's January 21st today, right?
So finding with a planning and zoning with a date of July 1st for execution? Would that be? Need that in the form of a motion, gentlemen?
I want to read Henry's words, if I can find them.
It's 2 pages. If you just vote to
Oh, I get
incorporate
2
it, then.
pages to read.
Yes.
Fantastic.
No, if you just vote to
So moved.
sustain the director's finding.
I vote to
and
sustain the director's findings with the caveat that we allow them to July 1st to vacate the property. That's all.
All right. We have a form of motion.
I second.
Second by Jim. Any further discussion?
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you for the 6 months.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor? All right. Good luck with everything you all are doing. Thank you. All righty, moving on. Old business, any?
None,
All righty. New business.
none. Nope.
I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all.